Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to see everyone. I'm sure more people will be coming in soon. Before we begin, I'd like to mention that last week our broadcast, was banned in 3 countries, including Syria and North Korea. They have sent me a link to the particular place where the country of North Koreans in particular was offended. So I'll go to this for the first time and let you see for yourself why this was offensive. Okay, they said it was at 1:57:33 ish. So let's just check and see what exactly was said by anybody. And it was just a matter of a few seconds, and then they decided to ban us.
Sing, Dave.
Nonsense.
And that was that. Oh, geez. Actually, I think I probably, this would be the first time that I actually agree with the government of North Korea. I think that they do have some proper grounds on that one. Dave, do you have anything to say about that?
Oh, I was sleeping. I'm sorry. Brian, I don't know how to explain this, so I'll just tell the people. It's really very hard when you say anything for me to stay awake. I mean, if we could take what you speak and how you speak on this show, I think insomnia would be a thing of the past. I mean, I think we should market that.
My cousins actually says that he has insomnia, and he says when you
Yeah,
speak, it puts me to sleep. So
I can understand
maybe
that.
we can, maybe that would become a popular channel. You have 40 million people around the world who have insomnia, and they just
Well, Brian, if we do go that
subscribe
route,
to the program.
I would
It's a
suggest
good way to make money.
I'll help you with it, but I would go podcast only because the converse is sometimes when people see you, it causes nightmare. So I'm not real sure, how it would balance out.
There could be worse.
So how was your week? You went back to school.
I went back to
How's that?
school this week, not with the students. I mean, we had class from the classroom, but the students come back actually on Monday. If I have to be honest with you, Dave,
Yeah,
I
well, I
would
would hope you
say
would be.
that because we're still in a remote situation in the sense that we're still using technology, I much prefer to use the technology which is at home, which I kind of use a lot
Mhm.
of this stuff. And I'm very, I don't want to say confident with it, but I feel very at ease using my own equipment. When you
Right.
start depending on other people to come through with your equipment and technology, that's an entirely different story, and all kinds of things. It basically puts me out of my comfort zone, which in one sense is good. It's always good to put yourself out of your comfort zone at some point in time, but not when you're teaching. I don't like that as a steady thing. And I think that was the
Right.
problem this week, and it's just something. Look, it is what it is. We have 3 months left. It's going to be tough for any school. In fact, I'm still not even sure why people are really going. I mean, why is this mad rush to go back if we're only going to do hybrid anyway? I mean,
Well,
why are you gonna have why are you going to have a hockey game if you have 3,000 people show up in a big
yeah.
arena?
Well, I do understand, and that's a good analogy. The difference is, I think, that somebody makes money, when the 3,000 people show up at hockey, not as much as you would with a full stadium. I've said that all along. Um, I understand why people want their kids back in school. I understand that. Having done education for 30 some years, my problem is there's only two ways really to do it. The right way, and there's no other way. And what I mean by the right way, uh, I'm not saying, you know, every school that has, full classes 5 days a week is the right way, but that's the way you have to have. You have to have the continuity. You can't do this half. So I'm just, I'm one of those. I don't have a nickel in it anymore. I'm not in education. But my vote, if they were asked me, would say, don't go back until you can bring everybody back for 5 days a week. What this smacks of is kind of the political decisions we hear so often. Well, we're back in school. No, you're not. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but basically you'll have 20% or something of your kids, right? Or 25 or 50%, whatever, it'll be a percentage. And so that means you're still teaching the other percent at home, which means you're still, all they're doing is sitting in front of you. Is that kind of correct? Do I
That's
have that right?
exactly what's happening, right?
And so what you're doing is, they don't get the advantage. I mean, of having their your undivided attention as a teacher, or nor anyone else. It's not just you.
Right.
And they don't get the advantage, of coming back. And it'll be interesting to see as schools come back, you know, what will happen. Now, it would be different if all teachers were vaccinated, although states are moving in that direction, and may, but students, aren't, and parents worry, and we just have to see. What if everything they taught was useless? HLS. I'm probably the bad guy. I'm probably the worst guy to ask, because I do think, and I think my record speaks for itself. I feel that a lot of what we do teach is useless, um, especially because it has to be, what should I say? Well, it is political. Everything's political, but it has to be purified. If Texas doesn't want it, it doesn't make the textbooks. And what the hell is Texas now but a renegade state? The structure of sports is counterproductive to society and individuals. I would say that sports do not have to be, but the way they're constructed now, they are, and that's part of the commercialization. I mean, listen, it's always good to talk about schools because that's something everybody likes. I mean, think about this. And anybody out there who disagrees with me, please check in. I love to debate. If you were to ask me in my 25 years with the public school system of New Jersey, well, 20, because five, well, yeah, 25. Okay. 25. What drove the high school curriculum? It's very simple: sports. And the reason is, you can't go later because you can't have sports. Because some sports like soccer, tennis, baseball have to play in the afternoons, and that's just crazy. And other countries don't have that. I know of four that I visited that don't. Australia, I haven't visited, but my grandchildren are there. But of the four, I thought China might have the best way they do it. No sports in school, no extracurricular activities in school. It's all done after school. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? But school comes first. And Brian, I'm going to go on record as saying that if we don't change the American education system drastically, what we're seeing now in terms of ignorance and misunderstandings and this kind of thing is just a very small to what it will be in the future.
Thank you, Dave. I'd like to actually address that myself, if you don't mind,
Oh,
Dave,
sure. That's
and
what we're here for.
Human, um, because there's so much nuance I mean, I think that's one thing I've learned in life in general. There's just so much nuance to everything that you learn, and I don't think any of you are going to disagree with me on this, but you get this commentary. Ever since I was even in high school or junior high school, the comment would come up: when am I ever going to need to use trigonometry or geometry if that's not the type of job that I'm going to do? And in many cases, you will not use specific, you won't be using the Pythagorean theorem or whatever. But I don't think that that's the point, and I really mean this. I don't think that's the point of school. I know what the curriculum is driving. They're driving, objectives, and they're driving standards. But, and I really mean this, that whether you don't learn the Pythagorean theorem or not, the point is that you learn how to learn. And I know Human was mentioning the socialization that is going to be part of it. I think one would only have to look at what's happened during the pandemic with the kids. I mean, they haven't been on the streets running riot. It's almost kind of like the opposite thing that's happened. They've kind of become very, very internal, and one can understand that. But I don't know that we really even learn too much in terms of actual content
Right.
until we get to college. Let me get us on the double screen here, Dave.
Yeah, I would agree.
We can say that maybe our educational system is flat at the high school level. For the most part, I mean, there are some, schools like Princeton High School and all that kind of stuff, those prep schools. But I think when you go to the university level, our universities are still better than
Well, that
most colleges around the world, and they still, as much as Moscow State University is a great university, a lot of Russians would love to study in the United States, and they know that it's for the most part better. You've got spies who come into our country to try to get into, these colleges, find what the scientists are doing. So it's so nuanced, and I would not want to just say that it's the educational system's a waste. I personally don't think it's a waste. We've had this conversation before, Dave. I don't know how you go about it. I think it's more in
well,
terms of
that's the problem, Brian.
Mm.
You're right. I mean, how do you go about it? Remember that interesting enough, in America, sometimes what makes America better than some others also makes it much more difficult in America. It's been my experience, and again, limited though it is, but observing some others and going to other countries and looking at their education system. Most of them do not have the everybody in forever system that we have. And what I mean by that is they decide fairly early, right, whether they're going on what track they're going to. And here, we keep the options open, which is, my problem is, and something you said there, I would agree. I think the purpose of school, one of the main purposes is to learn how to learn.
right.
So there's, but I think so many teachers, understandably, their passion is math, and they want to teach it as a math person. Or my passion is English. Okay, now English is the easiest of all to teach, really, which is very interesting, right?
Don't tell you some other teachers I know. They fret every night when they have to grade an essay.
Because with English, right? If you if you don't follow the curriculum, which I never did, you can draw in any subject you want. You can teach everything from that because one of the basic ways we learn is by reading. Another way of showing and demonstrating what we learn is by writing. And a way we communicate is speaking. In English class, that's really, in essence, what it is. But so many people, approach it as a literature class, which I don't think it should. At HLS, yes. I mean, one of the problems now.
That philosophy has changed, by the way. There's a reason why you teach the test now, because there is an objective to the lesson, and that objective should be based on what you want them to learn. And so that's why you're testing. Now, look, I'm not. Look, I don't.
I know you're not, Brian.
Disagree on that too.
No.
I mean, it's not as though you're just saying, okay, we got to teach the test and that's it, and I don't care if the kids don't learn.
No.
We do try to teach the content at the same time. You
The
do
problem
try to
becomes
teach them how to learn it, basically.
I know, but the problem becomes, Brian, more than just about any other
Conceptually.
occupation. More than this is my belief. More than just about any other occupation, public school teaching is governed by people who have nothing to do with public school teaching. Government, right? So they say basically what happened with the testing is people looked around and said the kids don't know anything, so let's make sure they know something. Well, what they know now is how to take tests, but it doesn't do anything with critical thinking. I just end this way. Schools were designed for a purpose. The American schools, as we still have them now, were designed for a purpose. They were to make workers, right? The factory workers. They were actually, believe it or not, to Americanize, the citizens. And all that's wonderful, but you have to come out being able to, we failed at that, certainly with civics, that's clear. And then of course, civics and history teachers go berserk. I'm trying to do my job. No. I know most teachers are trying to do their job, but the problem is basically what the systems are telling the school teachers to do is not what needs to be done. My way of thinking, first of all, teaching is building rapport. Without rapport, I don't use the word trust because there's always something, but rapport. People will follow you. And the idea of it is
a comfort zone when it's
I mean, and part of that is and part of that is and that's being taken away because now many teachers, and rightfully so, are so fearful of a remark misinterpreted, or a touch. One of the great ways, of course, but you don't run around feeling up people of any sex, but sometimes just that's nice. Look at how much we miss hugs. Now, I'm not saying teachers should run around necessarily hugging their students, but that's another way we express. So it's a very tough job. I don't criticize teachers. I do criticize administrators, those above. I criticize boards of education. I criticize textbook companies, and I do criticize this idea that somehow it can be taught without the human element. And I think if anything, the pandemic has proven that can't be done.
Right. It has done that. Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
Great
there's
point.
no question that you need that human element. You need that spark. You need, we call it in the business, right, Brian? We called it, and still do, call it a teachable moment.
Right.
And the problem becomes that those teachable moments are not fit into today's curriculum. HLS, when you say teaching the test, I want to give one example, which I not to take credit for it, although I did do it, but I'm just saying. So in my 25 years, I saw all kinds of absurdities, of course. But maybe, Brian, you weren't there then. You were in Cherry Hill. But in the 80s, the high school proficiency test in the state of New Jersey was given at 9th grade. Now, if anybody can explain how that makes sense, that at best is an entrance test, right? I mean, you're just starting high school in 8th grade. And the reason was when they gave the tests, so many kids failed that they felt it would take 3 years. Do you know why there's still no science test in high school? Do you know how many years they've been trying for one?
Go for it.
At least 20 in the state of New Jersey. And they can't find one that kids can pass, right? Mm-hmm. Well, because they're still trying to approach it as science content rather than doing just what you said, Brian. Teaching kids where do you go if you don't know something?
Well, I think Dave, I'm going to go into the test thing in a second. This wasn't one of the topics I expected to talk about. We do this. Well, we will go where it goes.
Yeah, that's what I want to do.
First of all, I just want to say, Human, thank you. I know that you got a hold of Regan Parenton. I know he's the fellow I know a little bit about. I've seen a few of his videos. He's from Arkansas, smart guy. Yeah, if you can arrange anything with him, we would love to have him on the show. Dave, he's a young guy.
I interrupted.
That's right. He's got in his 30s. Really, introspective guy from northern Arkansas. A lot of good thoughts.
I'm glad, but I want Human to come on the show just because I like the way he thinks.
Yeah, let's have him on.
I mean, we don't agree on everything, but I think we probably, and that's not why I want him on. Although, I mean, not because he agrees. I just think he's a good thinker. Now, I understand that some people don't want to do this. Joey Fulcher, yes. I hated that.
And by the way, Joe, we just got a call from Mr. Romello. He said that you did not complete your HSPT back in 1991, and they would like you to report to the office on Monday morning to finish that test. So please do so.
Now, I started before we got off on that tangent. One example was one of the crazy things I saw was one of the writing samples was called picture prompt, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, nothing wrong with the picture. In other words, the idea was you create a story based on what you see, right? But the problem became they started showing how would you call it? Dalí-esque. No, I'm saying Dalí-esque or Picasso-like pictures, and asking these kids who, basically are working with the literal world. And
right, and there's something like they said, I came up clock, and they can't, how are they going to figure that out?
So I came up with an idea of picking one thing and just writing about it, right. And that worked. But my argument was that was a great test. That was a great test if you were giving it to kids who were going on for creative writing, right?
Right.
I mean, that's a great test. But how many times does a picture prompt go up in your life? And, I've got to write about this if you're not a writer. And it's really zero, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, the other part that I do think is another part that I always disagreed with in the testing is vocabulary. I think this is the way, I never taught vocabulary this way, but I think we all experienced this. Monday, right? You get the 10 words. You remember this, Brian? Get the 10 words on Monday. You write the definitions on Tuesday. Wednesday, you turn them in written in a sentence.
Forget
Thursday, you do something. Friday, you take the test, you get 100. And by lunchtime on Friday, you can't remember one of them.
And that's the interesting thing, because I taught language this year, teaching Russian. And
right.
I know that at least the Russian method, and it's very, very successful, is that, I mean, yes, they teach vocabulary, but they teach phrases, because when you have it in
There you are.
context, you can remember better, and that way, you
Absolutely.
can't just keep throwing words together. Even
No.
in English, I mean, teach phrases. I mean, that should be done in any language, I think.
Or the other thing I thought about too, and that's an excellent idea, Brian.
Mhm.
Another way that I approached it was I said, okay, I would pick, I'd go through everything I was teaching for the year, and I would pick 180 words that I thought were the most important that the kids would encounter that year. And we just had word of the day, right? And we never really, I mean, we just reviewed them at the end of the week. We never really tested on them. But if they used it in anything they wrote and it was correct, that was a bonus for them,
Right.
because what there's some kind of rule. I mean, it's there's no such thing as a hard and fast rule, but they say that you have to use a word somewhere between 20 and 25 times before it becomes
I would
part
agree. I would agree with that, Dave.
of your vocabulary. So these lists now, again, anybody out there who has children who are worried about the SAT, I'll tell you what course to take: Latin. You don't need an English, because Latin teaches you roots and suffixes. And I'm going to guess and say, I haven't seen an SAT for a while. I've been out of education for 10 years, but I would say 80% of the words, an SAT that are a struggle word, have Latin or Latin
And that
Romantic
works with
roots.
many languages too. Just, I mean, the Russian has roots and things like that,
Right.
and prefixes that, if you understand the prefix system, it's
Yeah.
a lot
Well,
easier. So I think those things are great. But Dave, I want to come back to the test, if you don't mind.
okay. Oh,
And
sure.
this is not, I'm not patting back administration back, because I'm the last guy to do that.
No,
Or just
well,
administration in general, or
right.
'cause I mean, obviously, I think any administrator knows that they want to have the students think critically and all of that kind of thing. Just not just content, but in context, and all those kind of things. But I think part of it too is, you have, for example, in your English department, go back 30 years before you knew me. Each English
They
teacher,
were the good old days.
yeah,
Yes. I,
they each
I
one
think of
had
them
a
all
different
before I knew you.
test. They had a different test, a different way of going about things. And then some people, and I think all of us have this shared experience, perhaps you did in high school, where your teacher taught you something, and then when you had the test, hold it, there was only 20% of what he said was on there, and it was very frustrating. So you have to have some continuity with what's being taught and what's on the test. So that
But
part's
my
important.
Right. My argument would be to that. I think that's the role of the teacher, right? In other words, um, yeah, that's a thing. HLS. As someone who's worked with words ever since I kind of fell in love with them when my mom was reading to me, when before I could even knew really what stories were. Um, anyway, and this is just it works for me. Every word has a time to use it, and you have to consider a lot of things: context, audience. There's nothing worse than speaking words above what an audience can understand. We've all had that experience.
Right.
I get it a lot working with technology. I'm not any kind of computer geek. I mean, I use it a lot. I want to do it, and sometimes it's very difficult. When you talk to people, because they're so steeped in the language. We all have our jargon, right? Teachers have their jargon. Everybody, I mean, street kids have their jargon. Try to figure that out. All right. So you have to make it explicit. And, words are not meant to impress. They're meant to communicate. But every word, there's a use for every word, that's ever been invented. Sometimes time passes it by, but it's still there. Back to the test, though, for a moment, or the idea of rigidity in testing. I think the problem, there's also, I think a lot of times, because teachers should be allowed to approach the material differently, because I think that's part of the creativity of teaching. I think they should be free to design their own tests. Now, Brian, you pointed up a very real problem with that. Left to their own devices, maybe the teacher will teach it one way and then grab the test.
Right.
You've seen that from the book.
And this is, again, as I say, this is nuanced, because yes, as you mentioned,
Well,
you want some teachers to,
I would tell you what, I mean, I would do this. I never, again, it worked for me. I don't know if it works for you. I never used a teacher's manual, ever. They're terrible. So you'd look at it. If I was teaching a poem or teaching a story, I'd read it on my own and then figure out what was important. And then we talk about it. Yeah, well, Buckley, Buckley's one of the, I loved William Buckley just because he looked like a snake with that tongue going. If you remember, if anybody saw him, but yeah, he could. I mean, you know where else though? HLS and Brian. I don't know if you're aware of this. If I was going to tell somebody, I don't want to use Latin for vocab. You know where I tell them to go? Quite honestly,
Yes,
this.
New Jersey's still number one, by the way.
Um, here's the thing. You know where I tell them to go, Brian? Now I haven't watched it for, but when Michael was younger, professional wrestling. Now that sounds absurd, right? But they do kind of that essence of saying these words. Some of the wrestlers, especially the managers, and so I did that for a while with my general kids. I'd say, what do you watch? And they'd tell me. I say, okay, watch it, but pick up a word you don't know and bring it to class. And it could be wrestling, it could be anywhere. And that's another way with vocabulary. We only really pick up the words we need, right? I don't know a whole hell of a lot of words in
A lot of
science.
people read a book without having a dictionary next to them. They'll just skip over the word they don't know.
Well, that's not that. I even taught kids to do that. That's not so bad. But what you need to do is, jot it down.
Right.
Yeah. And then when you come back, because a lot of times you said before the phrases, a lot of things you get in context, right? You don't get it from an isolated word. Words can mean many things. They mean different things
Dave,
in context.
can I ask you this?
Oh, anything.
I mean, this is a serious question. I've told you that when I've read Hitchens, I love reading Hitchens.
Right.
And he has a very, for want of better words, a cavalier type of use of language. But he was understandable. Why is it that somebody like Hitchens, I can read it, and I can get from A to Z, no problem, and then the next person, like, when it gets very, very technical, I can't get through the sentences. What is it about a Hitchens that sets them apart?
I can tell you exactly, and it also applies to teaching, Brian. We all have things in reading that we like to read. Okay, I used to use this, and I believe it to be true. One of the things for years I started my class this way. I mean, on the very first day, I'd say, okay, we're only going to have two groups in here coming in. One is I love to read, and the other is I hate to read. Of course, what I said, nope. Even if it's 50, what would that make it? 49? What would that make it? Like 49.9, 50.1, or whatever that could be. And then so they would, they'd put up their hands in one or two groups. And I said, man, I don't know if I want to teach you guys. And they look at me and say, well, I said, you're all lying. And man, would they get mad, right? Because this first day, who's this teacher to tell me I'm a liar? And I said, here's the truth. And it gets kind of what you were dealing at. I said, everyone loves to read what they want to read when they want to read it. And everyone hates to read what they don't want to read when they don't want to read it. So with Hitchens, what Hitchens does for you, it can be ideas, it can be language, it could be simpatico thinking. It relates. Now, my argument with teachers, and I did this in front of a whole group of administrators, and they booed and threw me out, which was really what happened most of my career, which is fine. I love that. They were talking about rigor. That was a big word. You remember that a few years ago, rigor?
Yes.
Academic rigor. Well, that's wonderful. But Brian, I want you to do something for me. Would you please right now? If you take off your headphones, I want you to jump up and have your head hit the ceiling. Could you do that for me, please?
Jump up and do what?
You got to take your earphones off because I don't want you to turn over. Would you jump up and have your head hit the ceiling?
I just took my earphones and I can't hear what you said.
Well, put them back on then. I want you. Can you hear me?
It's. I have a slanted wall on an angle.
No, but I'm talking. I mean, you can't get up there, right? I mean, you can't. You got to slant a wall and that's the same thing with rigor. Rigor's wonderful, but you got to start where the student is then. And their idea was rigor. So I went in and I taught a lesson on the futility of war. And I started out with War and Peace. Mm-hmm. And everybody groaned, as you would. Who the hell wants to read? I mean, you read Russian novels because, but they're not easy to read.
I read them in English, but like I'll read Sherlock Holmes in Russian.
No, but I'm just saying they're not easy. Okay, they're not easy. I mean, they're worth it. They're Russian. They just have a flair, and they're lengthy. But okay, so I said, well, that's too much. Let's bring it down a little bit. And one of the great American novels is Red Badge of Courage by Stephen Crane. Okay. And I said, well, we could do that. But I found a lot of students because even though that's only 1865, so that was like 120 years ago when I was teaching, that wording was so archaic that they couldn't get it. It might as well have been Russian to them, right? So I said, well, let's try another one. One of my favorite young adult fiction writers, I think he was, in fact, not because I need to be supported, but he was the first youth writer laureate out of the Library of Congress, Walter Dean Myers. Just brilliant, right? He wrote one thing called Fallen Angels about Vietnam, and it was wonderful. And that grabbed kids. But I said, I can do the same thing with Dr. Seuss's The Butter Battle book. It's the rigor is in the intellectual questioning and the stimulus, not in the source, right? And that's where schools fall down. They think rigor is, the hardness. And of course, I ended it as I always did, and that didn't do real well. I talked about rigor, that some people got, like males got when they visited strip clubs, and no. But the idea of it is, we just have these wrong ideas about it. Yes, rigor is good, but it's the rigor of thinking, right? It's not the rigor of the material.
And it can be. So I have a clip. I want you to see this, Dave. I almost feel like I'm just talking to you, and in a certain sense, I am. But I think, and I've got Gary's going to have a comment. But I want to put this. You're going to have to listen to it for about 2 or 3 minutes. It's Bukowski.
Okay, I will.
Okay, but I thought, I like what he had to say because it's kind of reflecting.
And I will bring this when we get done with.
Okay, let me just put this on so you can hear it. Hopefully, you'll be able to.
I yawned myself to shit.
Why?
Why? Because, like any other writer, there's no pace, there's no quickness in his lines. There's no life, there's no sunlight. When you write, your words must go like this. Bim, 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 bim. Each line must be full of a delicious little juice, flavor. They must be full of power. They must make you like to turn a page. Bim, bim, bim. What these guys do, they say, well, in blah, 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 da, 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 there was a porch chair. The flies were walking around. You see, they're too leisurely. They're setting up the scene for the grand emotion. And when they get to the grand emotion, there isn't any.
All right. I think, Dave, I'm going to switch back. I think you get the point there. I mean, did you hear that?
Oh, yeah, I could hear that.
And I think that kind of makes me feel, I did not like that, the green porch or the whatever it was. When you go too much into detail, I don't like it. And Hitchens never did that. I always felt like it was right there in the moment, and it made me want to go to the next. I could understand it.
But see, again, understand that that's the way you think also, Brian.
That's true.
You're not really interested. You're interested in the intellectual part, but you want to get somewhere, right?
Right. I'm gonna go. Yeah, this one. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. No, you finish.
No, I'm just saying. So it's like when you ask somebody who's your favorite author, that tells a lot about a person. Because and it's really hard. Who's your favorite today? It's tomorrow. It's I don't know. But usually, if anybody at the top of my list, they speak to me. Or it's not so much language with me. They speak ideas, to me that either I haven't encountered or I'm still wondering about. And see, there's a big difference between types of reading. Reading for information. That's very important. I don't know. I think as far as enjoyment is concerned, I think there's nothing like poetry and drama, although drama is not made to be read. It's made to be seen. Poetry is not really meant to be read. It's made to be heard because it's really, song lyrics without music. That's what poetry is. But prose is meant, fictional prose is meant to be read and digested internally. And I don't know how many kids really, that's great and, for enjoyment, but they really do need to come out being able to read informational text. And then I used to argue that all teachers should be reading teachers. That didn't go over real well because, people were saying like, well, I come to you, you're a business teacher. Well, wait a minute, I got to teach business. Right. Well, I would ask you, if your kids can't read, how much business can you teach? Right?
Although
Now, you could
some kids, like some ESL kids, can do really well in math if they can just kind of like see the problem. They don't necessarily have to have the whole description.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is, the idea of it is that, yeah, most all teachers, now I don't know, it's changed so long, Brian. It's been 10 years since I've been, an active teacher. But even with the math test, the biggest problems the kids had were with the word problems. They were reading problems,
Right. Those they get murdered on. Right. Absolutely.
more than math.
And invariably they would just give up. Right.
And what happens is, I followed a lot of the American schools, and again, it's very hard because it begins at home. I mean, that is part of it, reading, and if you're steeped in books and whatever. But the problem is, there's more to reading than just reading the words or reading the sentences, and that's where the kids fall down. They can read the words, they might not know what but it's an idea, and then remembering is very hard for kids.
Right. Dave, this one is going to deserve a sounder, so.
Go ahead.
Definitely, because I started posting it, but it's. Or Gary Peacock. I like that comment. There's something about that it's because we could go into the whole psychology. We as you've mentioned, he's another one with the cavalier language was Buckley. But when he got hot under the collar, where did he go? He
right.
didn't.
Well,
right. He went straight to goddamn.
Although
queer.
I will say this about Gore Vidal. Boy, was he brilliant. Okay. And
Absolutely. He was great.
He's one of my idols, but he was an obnoxious prick at getting under people's skin, right? I mean, he knew how to do that.
But he was right that night. The claims he made
of course
correct.
Of course he was right.
Buckley got hot under the collar. He couldn't take it.
But he was baiting Buckley. That doesn't. But I'm going to say Buckley couldn't hold that, right? Right. If you go back and look at it. Now,
I'll dig that up, by the way, as you're talking.
Two comments. One on that, and then we'll get back. One on that is, do you realize, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that what Gary just posted, that debate, it happened in the, you know when it happened? Do you know where it happened, Brian, historically?
68.
Here's what happened. Here's your story.
Chicago, right? Or something like that.
Here's what happened. In 1968, channel ABC, the ABC network, was nothing in terms of news. Nothing, right? Mm-hmm. Walter Cronkite at CBS had it hammered. And then anybody who was left over went with Huntley Brinkley on NBC. And the ABC executives, being relatively smart people, said, what the hell can we do? We're not going to have anybody watch us. And of course, it's about ratings. And a small group of them said, well, let's try debate. And they said, okay, we got to get two people who really don't like each other, and are really at different polar aspects. So they selected Buckley and Vidal. And that, do you know who, outside of the idea of when the fracas was happening on the floor or outside, who had the highest ratings? ABC News for that. And that is the moment when Fox News was born. Confrontational news was born in 1968. So you can, if you love it, you can credit.
Let's check that out, because some people may not have seen it. Those who
the Buckley, yeah.
Let's just take a quick peek at this.
Let me say something, Mr. Smith. It's extremely interesting and extremely lively to sit by and watch professional critics of the Republican Party burlesque people whom the Republicans themselves tend to like. You may have forgotten that a few moments ago we were treated to Mr. Gore Vidal, the playwright, saying that after all, Ronald Reagan was nothing more than a, quote, aging Hollywood juvenile actor. Now, to begin with, everybody is aging. Even you are, Bill. You are, Bill. Yes, so therefore, that adjective didn't contribute anything extraordinary to the human understanding. Then he said Hollywood. Now, one was either acted in Hollywood during the time Mr. Reagan acted, or one didn't act at all. Mr. Vidal sends all of his books to Hollywood, many of which are rejected, but some of which are going out in film.
Oh, Bill, I never seen any of that.
He called him a juvenile actor, which is presumably to be distinguished from an adult actor. Now, my point is that if you play this sort of a game, you can say, look, I don't think it's right to present Mr. Gore Vidal as a political commentator of any consequence, since he is nothing more than a literary producer of a perverted Hollywood-minded prose.
Now, Bill,
I think this kind of analysis, for the very simple reason that
now, Bill, if I may say,
just as I think ABC has the right,
Bill,
just as I think ABC has the authority
Bill,
to invite, I'm almost through.
No, you're not, in every sense. Let Mr. Buckley finish this sentence, then Mr. Vidal, I'm sure you plan to refute.
That ABC has the authority to invite the author of Myra Breckinridge to comment on Republican politics. I think that the people of California have the right, when they speak overwhelmingly, to project somebody into national politics, even if he did commit the sin of having acted in movies that were not written by Mr. Vidal.
How about Mr. Vidal's answer to that? Well, as usual, Mr. Buckley, with his enormous and thrilling charm, manages to get away from the issue toward the comedy. He's always to the right, I think, and almost always in the wrong. And you certainly must, Bill, maintain your reputation as being the Marie Antoinette to the right wing, and continually imposing your own rather bloodthirsty neuroses on a political campaign.
Oh, that was not all of it, and let's just get it. I think I get it here.
This is Miami Day One.
All the network made
I'll get
led to such a low moment.
Conducting Del Buckley.
The studio and have a very heated exchange.
Give me a second here, folks. I will get that. Maybe this was it. Hold on.
Meet your next pillow. Why do we make our pillow in the shape of a cube? I'll tell you.
You must realize what some of the political issues are here, that many people in the United States happen to believe that the United States policy is wrong in Vietnam, and the Viet Cong are correct in wanting to organize their country in their own way politically. This happens to be pretty much the opinion of Western Europe and many other parts of the world. If it is a novelty in Chicago, that is too bad. But I assume that the point of the American democracy is you can express any point of view you want. Shut up a minute.
No, I won't. And some people will throw Nazi, and the answer is that they were well treated by people who ostracized them, and I'm for ostracizing people who egg on other people to shoot American Marines and American soldiers. I know you don't
As
care.
far as I'm concerned, the only sort of pro-crypto Nazi I can think of is yourself. Failing that, I would only say that we can't have.
Now listen, you
the right of assembly.
Stop calling me a crypto Nazi.
Let's stop calling names.
You in the goddamn face, and you'll stay plastered.
Gentlemen, let's
Let the author of Myra Breckinridge go back to his pornography and stop making any illusions of Nazism to somebody who was in infantry in the last war.
You were not in the infantry, as a matter of fact. I would like to. You were not.
Let me switch there. Yeah,
Fine, Brian, but you're not going to find it
No,
necessarily.
I just got it, but it was good.
Which what you actually showed is more to the point. Now, at that point, as far as I think it goes, you couldn't find a more right, meaning philosophical conservative than Bill Buckley, and you couldn't find someone more liberal than Gore Vidal. And my point was, I was watching that not from as 1968. That's where we are today in discussions. Neither man, none of us could hear what was going on. Now, some of that was the sound quality at the time because they're talking over one another.
Right.
And of course, what you want to get to is eventually, of course, the name calling. Vidal called him at first a neo-Nazi and then corrected himself. He's a real Nazi in the conversation. And finally, Buckley snapped and just called him a faggot queer is really what he did. And of course, Gore Vidal was gay. Now, they were enjoying it up to a point. But I mean, really, can you see that, Brian? I mean, can you see the birth of modern political right
because,
there?
You know, and you saw first of all, the discomfort that Smith had with this. He was trying to, and there's no way to control it.
Remember when they were trying to control Donald Trump? You know, please now, Mr. Trump.
Right. And he couldn't do it.
And this is where this is kind of, people say, "Oh, Dave, you deal too much in history." It's because that's
a million and a half views for what we just saw, and that's just in one channel.
Yeah. So what happens is, I think when you go back and you look at this, you see where things come from, but also you say, well, it didn't happen yesterday. Now that doesn't exonerate Fox. It doesn't. What I'm saying is, what it does show is TV has never been, Brian, about truth. Never. It's been about ratings. You could say the same thing in terms of a newspaper. It's a business. It is a business primarily. But I think, again, the problem that I have with television and radio, it's in your face. Newspaper, if you don't want to read the article, glance over it, right?
Right, but it is more than just ratings now, because now, like when you have a propaganda on, we knew that Goebbels didn't do it for ratings. He did it to just
you can do it for both.
Hatred against foreigners.
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that Fox.
they're all related, but Fox.
No, what I'm saying is, I'm not. Unless they would come here or let me come there, and they would say, Dave, we're doing this because we believe in the Conservative Party. They're doing it for ratings, Brian. They're doing it for ratings.
Oh, I'm sure. Look, they want to have eyeballs watching. That's true.
Yeah, and
But there's a danger to that.
Oh, of course. Well, the danger is you're doing something for money.
You said if the propaganda is, and by the way, and I just posted something from the New York Times. We have this word propaganda, we have fake news, and we have disinformation. Because there's there's a big difference between disinformation and propaganda. And then the problem is when you have disinformation, people will believe it to be true,
Right. And that brings us kind of full circle about the idea of teaching and this. What we have, and I say it every week, but I think it deserves, it's the one thing I see. We have a lot of divisions, but our biggest division right now in America is what I call the reality division. There are a group of people, about a third of America, roughly, give or take, who do not see the reality the way that I see it. And 40%, I think we're a little bit larger number.
But there are larger, when you say 30%, Dave, you also must admit that in some states, that 30%
Oh,
is 80%.
no, I'm talking about,
that's
right,
a big problem.
No, I'm talking about overall, right?
Right.
Well, my theory on that, I don't think we're 50 states united. I think we're 50 separate countries. I really do. Until we get a federal government, and there's a danger to this, but the pandemic has showed us certain things have to be done nationally. You can't leave it to the states. You can't.
And Dave,
if you want a country.
Would you say this? This is going to take it maybe a little bit deeper than we want to go. But for example, that the Delaware Valley is a tri-state area. Those people, they grew up on soft pretzels. They like the Eagles. Then when you go up to Trenton, and here, even with states, it's almost as if it's just sections of states that are near each other that have it's bizarre.
Well, think about it though, Brian. If you just think geographically about America, it's a pretty big country, right? Now you say, oh no, Brazil. You know how much is rainforest in Brazil? How much unexplored land do we really have? Not unexplored, but unused. There's not a lot,
not
right?
A lot, right? Most of it's concentrated in the coast.
A desert,
a
few mountains, and so it stands to reason.
And nor do you want it developed. You should have big cities to have an ecological disaster of everybody just spreading out and shitting over the place.
That's part of it too. But again, and I want to get to my favorite tonight at some point, not now, Mr. Roy Johnson. I'll bring him up later. But coming back to this education thing, that is also part of our division. Look,
absolutely. Most from as you know, the textbooks that are printed in Texas are different than what they're going to look like when they come to New Jersey, especially when it comes to science.
I would advise, if you really want to see that, I would advise turning off this show right now or putting it in your ears. I think it's on now. Inherit the Wind is on tonight about the Scopes Monkey trial,
right?
Which is what it's called, and Clarence Darrow and William Bryan Jennings, and that shows you, William Bryan Jennings is like that period's William Buckley, and Clarence Darrow was like that period's Gore Vidal, or this period, Sean Hannity versus Rachel Maddow, or whatever you want. Mm-hmm. The problem becomes when you have this reality crisis. There was also one which in 1968 to 74, but that was very much too a generational crisis, right? Old against young, and all young people eventually become older, right? If they live.
Yes.
but right now, I don't know. I don't see it coming together. I mean, I just don't. If anybody out there has a way that we can unify, I'm certainly, I would love to listen to them. But right now, I think for whatever the foreseeable future is, which of course is doesn't make any sense because you can't foresee any of the future. I think it will be whoever holds control. It's their way, and the other side isn't necessarily going to work with it.
Well,
I
the
don't
way
know
things are going now, Bill Maher brought it up, Dave, is that
Yeah.
China is becoming so productive and their students are so productive that at some point, this country is going to be so far left behind, it won't really matter because we won't be able to compete.
Well,
Asia's going to take it.
I'm going to take a little bit. I'm going to take a little bit of away from Mr. Moore there, and I'm not saying it won't happen eventually, but I think you also addressed it right now. But our bright kids are as bright as anybody's bright kids. They still are, Brian.
Right,
and
they have a billion and a half people.
When they get right, but when they get to university, I speak with something. The largest single group living here with me right now are Chinese graduate students. Right, it's the largest single factor that we have in Crystal Plaza. You can't, to the left of you, to the right of you, and they're coming here because you said it. Our secondary system is still the most excellent in the world. China has 2 universities, Moscow University, there's Oxford and Cambridge, but they're stuck with the monarchy. I mean, so it's just kind of interesting. Now, what does that mean? Do they come here? I ask most of the students when I see them, we're talking about, are they going back? And of course they're going back home, but are they going back home, more nationalized? Are they going back home more Americanized? Is that good or bad? I don't know, but I still think it'll be a while. And the other thing, based again, talking to my son, he says, he speaks around the world, universities and college students, and he's been graduate programs, and he said the Chinese right now are brilliant with the factual stuff, and the mathematics and the science, but they don't have any critical thinking because, of course, that
has changed when it comes to drones because that DJI company is amazing.
I'm not, but that's still a product.
The designs they've had, but the designs are just so imaginative.
I know, but that's not thinking on your feet. That's what I'm saying. Right now, would you agree with this? China does not value individual thought as much as the Western world.
The obvious answer is no, they don't. They don't,
Brian.
However, I still think that, I think we're jumping again. I think there's nuance to this. I think that the Chinese government has, the fact that they have a large middle class now and an upper class. Part of that was let them do. Now they still have a communist government, but in terms of letting them do what they want to do and create, they are letting that happening. They're getting better at that.
So in Hong Kong, they're letting them have their way?
That's not politically, but in terms of they want to, as far as business and creating products, new products.
Okay,
generally,
but
yes.
is that because they're going to be more capitalist? And is that a good thing, or they just become a bigger United States?
Well, I'll say this: look at the continuum. Okay, just forget about our discussion about whether it is or isn't. You tell me. You look at the skyline in Hong Kong, and you look at the skyline in Philadelphia or even New York. You look at, as Mara said, that the high-speed rail service. You tell me which is the if you came from outer space and say which people are more creative, I would bet that they would say that China, and even if you don't think at this point in time that that's true, look at the continuum. There used to be a point in like 1948 that a Chinese person would be proud to have a light bulb in their room.
If you're going to say that, my question is the essential question, which I don't answer because I don't have an answer to it. Are they headed in the right direction? You know what I mean? In terms of that having the tallest building, does that make you something? I mean, I don't know.
If it's efficient, they are. Anything that builds efficiency and personal comfort, then you're doing a good job.
Okay, so they make our public transportation system.
This one, hold on one second, Dave. This one does deserve
individualism. Sound. Yeah, I agree.
And we want to go into that. Okay, now let's
Go
think
ahead.
about that for a second, because in a way, it can. If you think if this me generation, just the idea of me generation, for example, my generation, the ones who went to high school in the 70s, you know, you would have expected them to be concerned about the environment, that we were going in that direction. I was recycling back when I was 12 and 13, and then all of a sudden they gave up and they wanted to have, you know, a place down in Avalon, New Jersey, and a yacht, and that individualism destroys everything, you know, because it says me.
Right.
The minute you say me, we have a problem.
I don't disagree with that. And what I'm saying is Asian culture in general is very much oriented around the group, okay, especially Japan. And that has pluses and minuses too.
Gary.
You know, and Gary says my freedom, and
That's
Gary,
what the Republicans are saying. I want my freedom.
well, here's the thing. Freedom is the most misunderstood word in the English, or one of the most misunderstood words in the English language.
Right.
Because freedom has to have fetters, for lack of a better term, on it. Because I'm free to punch you in the nose. It doesn't make it right. It, you know, but I'm just saying. So you have to look out. So Brian, I think you really put your finger on it. What you have to have, and this is a very tough tightrope to walk. You have to have a country that allows for enough individual freedom so that individual ideas can come and grow and be respected. But you can't value those individual freedoms. Like, for example, I'm sorry, I don't think any American has a right to go out and not wear a mask. I'm sorry. I mean, if that upsets somebody, oh well, right? You know, nobody is forcing you to go out. What we're saying is, you know, we don't want to make, we don't want to make you sick. You don't want to make us sick. And this freedom, we've talked about it before. It'll come back. I ran across, talk about racist motherfuckers. I was running across some past quotes this week and some research I was doing on John Wayne. Wow.
Yeah, he's a motherfucker.
But he was a person of his time, right? But
I mean, he served
wow.
too. I mean, he served in a weird way.
Well, I mean, you know, but I mean, to be held up, you know, it was just, you know, and so what, you know, but that's, you know, I would say, you know, many Republicans, even if they don't know who John Wayne is, kind of say, oh, that's a man, or that, you know, that's this thing. And, you know, my problem, I'm not a fan of capitalism. My problem is I haven't seen any system, whether it's religious or political, put in by humankind that is that much stirring or better that can be duplicated as the one around the world. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I mean, you know, I don't have the system. Maybe somebody can. I certainly know that right now we are politically broken. Now, is that because the system is broken? Is it because we're too divided?
Well, we're philosophically broken.
Or morally broken? Whatever, right. I mean, right now...
And meanwhile, the Chinese, like I say, they're developing.
Well, they're being driven,
like
right?
Mars.
Well, yeah, of course. The other thing is, you know, I mean, I'm just not sure, you know, that they'll be as successful. You know, I mean, you know,
and I don't think more of a homogenous population too.
Well, there you are also. You know, there's probably no more ethnocentric people than the Japanese. You know, I mean, they've just really, I mean, you know, and they were able to do certain things, but they're so small that it doesn't work. Now, China does have the advantage of people, certainly. I keep thinking of my father. You know, he wasn't a great political thinker, but he said, I remember him saying, it just stuck with me a few times with me. He says, someday China will dominate the world. And I said, what do you mean, Dad? He said, well, you can line them up. You know, said if they could continue to produce at the rate they're producing, continue, you could line them up and you would run out of bullets if you put them 4 abreast before you could get rid of them all. And that idea is population. So anything that needs population, they're going to be very successful at. The question becomes, they have to be very careful, though, because as they're starting to get very much, they were always a system of, all countries are a system of wealth and poverty, right? But the difference was, just like the monarchy in Bridgeton in England, Bridgeton. Yeah, the monarchy of Bridgeton, New Jersey. No, that was kind of accepted on a different level. But, you know, everybody kind of says, well, wait, so we don't know. Right now,
I think there may be, even in China, some, I can't really explain it, but maybe some sort of eugenics going on there because of their system, that the ones who are pushing the thing forward are catered to, and the rest are just giving me,
Well,
you know, and that's going to make it even harder for us to give it. I mean, I'm not describing
well,
as eugenics.
well,
but
the other thing is, Brian, you know, and you and I have had this discussion before too. You know, first of all, I think America's always been overrated, right? You know, I mean, I've never been enamored.
Certainly is now, that's for sure.
Well, what I mean is, we've never lived up. Our true value is in the words of our founding fathers, who they didn't even apply when they put them in. But if you could live up to that, right?
Right.
You know, I mean, yes, you know, when they said all men are created equal, they meant all white men, landowner, dad, and women.
Right.
But, you know, we've expanded that a little bit. And now what I see the Republicans trying to do is bring that back almost. You know, they say they're, what is it? What's the word? You know, traditionalists. Well, they almost are. That's what they want again. You know, white men being in charge. And that didn't work out real well.
No,
so, and it's certainly not going to work out real well. Like, you know, along those lines, I'm very concerned. Well, I don't get very concerned except personal things, but I'm concerned, let me use that, about what's going to happen with the Minnesota police officers trial.
Yeah, I mean,
I want a fair judgment. But if there's ever a time to convict someone for the good of the nation, this is it, man. This is it. I mean, please don't let him get off on a technicality or any kind of, you know, I mean, I hesitate to make any predictions anymore because so many of my predictions are wrong.
Well, it's to me,
but
there's some things that are so obvious. You know,
that was a murder, Brian.
Right,
that was a murder, pure and simple,
on television,
pure and simple.
You know,
and yet, you know, the others. I mean, it's Breonna Taylor. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on.
Well, this one, it doesn't matter. I mean, look, they're all, you know, bad,
right?
But this one, this is the one everybody saw. It was during the pandemic.
But I'm going to play your role now. You're saying, but would you concede or would you agree? There's a chance he'll get off. Of course there is.
There's some, like you say, a technicality where they say that a policeman, if they feel threatened, so they can just say, "I feel threatened, so I just shot off the nuclear bomb," you know, and you know.
Well, and right now, that seems to be working for police because you have to, you know, they have a different threshold of, you know, of protection is what you're saying. Now, you know, and the same thing holds true for the domestic terrorists that took over the Capitol. You know, it's interesting now to see, you know, how they're weeping and wailing and gnashing their teeth and, oh, Trump told us to go, but now he's not. But the idea of it is, I mean, that in itself is, you know, how does a patriot take the American flag and beat a police officer with it? I mean, how does a patriot do that? I don't think a patriot can do that.
Because it's the cult of personality, the figure that they're following.
There you are. And that is the ultimate danger. You know, one of the problems, in a way, some religions are like that, right? Because the God figure isn't here. So it becomes the cult of personality of Billy Graham or Jimmy Swaggart, right? Or whomever the preacher of the moment is. And now, truly, now, I haven't been around that long. I've only been on the planet, be coming up on 69 years this month. So in the relative scheme of things, I haven't been this long. But I haven't found a politician who has been worshipped by as many, and definitely not as deeply as Donald Trump has been. No. I don't care who it was. Not FDR, not JFK, not Lincoln Lincoln was just holding on by a thread. Right?
Because he says the same things that these racists who really believe that black people are ruining the country and really believe that Democrats are communists. They really believe that. So when they get someone like Trump,
and what did I say that was? That's a reality. That's a reality crisis. Okay, it's not about me denying that I'm this. I am a liberal. Okay, I have no problem with that. And yes, I'm going to disagree with almost every position a conservative has, but again, you don't see me defending Cuomo right now, do you? And I never came to his defense. I'm leery of all politicians. The only reason I supported Joe Biden is exactly what we're seeing. He's a man of compassion. That's all. That's all.
He's shown it. He's shown it.
And that's it. And I knew that. And I said, he was the perfect anti-Trump.
Especially as he's gotten older, because I think when they say you get wiser, he has learned to
Yeah.
You know, I feel for people like Carter. How he's involved.
Somebody might say, "Well, Dave, wait a minute. You just said there could be no unity." He keeps calling for unity, but let's look at that. He's calling for it. Is he really pushing it? No. You know, he's not saying, stop. We got this bill. People don't realize how big a deal this was, getting this through.
It was a real big deal.
I mean, bigger than we even. It'll take 50 years to judge how big this was. It has the potential to be, if it's just the beginning of something, it has the potential to change society more radically than the New Deal. It really does. Not this one thing.
No, I believe it. There's so many things inside of it that are going to help.
If we can continue along this route. Now, what is terrifying, if you want to call it terrifying, is the fact that every state in Republican control is pushing voting rights back to a level below that of Reconstruction. Now, before we get all panicky and stuff, it hasn't been tested in the courts yet, right? But that's another thing. We may need, and people aren't going to like this, but we may need elections are what keep America together. I was giving some thought to that this week, and Brian, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this. I'm not sure I'm right yet, but I was thinking and you mentioned earlier, they're more homogeneous. Many countries, we're really just a bunch of bastards, right? I don't mean that bastards. I mean, we just came from everywhere, right? I mean, except we took, the only people that were here were the indigenous people, and they're not doing real well today, right?
I think Joey's right about that, don't you?
Oh, there's no question. There's no question about that, Joe. But the idea of it is, you get the two things that I think maybe more than anything else that made us people were our laws, right? And that's what's hanging right now. You have a party that doesn't really care about the laws. They really don't. I mean, they care about the laws for others and that kind of thing. And before we make heroes of all the Democrats, you have to look at the Cuomos of the world, but the idea of it is, I mean, the idea of it is, by the way,
that's embarrassing too, because, we should hold ourselves to that higher standard, and, knowing that all this crap's going on, why he pulled that shit,
because that's what entitled people do, Brian. Okay. Now, entitled people, were you ever entitled? I don't think so, other than the entitlement you get for being white. Okay. That's all. Right. We all have that. Every white person in America has that. And I'm sorry, anybody who disagrees with me is wrong. And I rarely say that, but it's true. But I mean, as far as most of us, most Americans don't have that. Trump had it from birth, right? Some people get it later. I mean, I love the idea of Jeff Bezos, self-made man, was on his knees. Bezos came up with a good idea. You know what he was before? He was rich, not like he is now, but he was making money on the stock market, right? I mean, he was a financier. And man, it's hard to be a moralistic financier. Wow, there's not many of them, right?
It would have been nice to get the $15 minimum wage, but it was just that, Manchin was still on the way, and so was Kyrsten.
The other thing is, I've said before, and I'm saying I'm not one to say my biggest concern about the $15 wage, and it's not a reason not to have it, but this is my biggest concern, is it still doesn't provide a livable wage for people. You can't live, I'm sorry, you can't live on $15 a week in most American communities. Now, and what I'm worried about is very much what happened with the civil rights movement. A lot of white people say, well, they got all the laws now. It's got to be, what's wrong? They got all the laws. Well, same thing. We gave them $15. What the hell's the difference? I mean, I'd rather see us attack it as, across the board kind of thing. What do we need to do in America so that people somehow can live not at Mar-a-Lago, right? Or not where I live necessarily, but can actually live. Now, I think again, this bill does a lot with that, with the child.
There's a lot in that bill that's going to change a lot of people's lives.
Now, Trev, I'm not. I always like to question. Biden is pretty Trump too. Now, again, if we were on the show, I'd be asking you. So I'm just asking you now. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, what does that mean? And I'm saying, yeah. I mean, if you're to say they're politicians, yes, that's true. Are you going to say that Biden in the past plagiarized a term paper and Trump probably paid somebody to write his? Yeah, that's true. If you're going to say, they're men, if you're going to talk about, but even with the fondling and stuff, out of every accusation ever made against Joe Biden, there's one that comes across as a sexual assault. That he fingered that woman in the Capitol. Now, if he did, that's horrible. I understand, but Trump, it's pretty clear. So I have a hard time. I mean, I might be missing something, but I think they're basically very different. 15 might not be, but 7 definitely is negative. Okay, help me out there, Mandy. What do we talk, Brian? Do you get it?
Minimum wage, because like in Kansas.
Oh no, no. You're no, Mandy. You're right. I'm not saying it's not a reason to have it. My fear is you can't stop there. So.
And if you can't look, if Joe Manchin is going to, become a Van Drew, you got to be careful. And look, I think it should be $20 an hour. But I'm saying it should be what we got out of that. Even Sanders said, we got a big chunk, and they had just enough to get Manchin and Sinema to come to that side. So you take what you can get now, and then you work on the minimum wage.
And this is something that I don't have an answer for, but okay.
Or tell the kids don't work for these, but just have almost like a boycott. Unless you're going to pay me $15, I'm not making your burgers.
Yeah, and the problem becomes, what about the small mom and pop shops, right? That are barely making it now. Some of them will go, and so what it does is, we all feel bad about that right now. That's one of the things I feel worse about. Every time we lose another mom and pop shop here, another one of my favorites, they can't make it. They're just, you can't make it with 5 customers a day. You can't, there's not even a reason to turn it. And now if there's a way to say, well, if you work for Amazon, you should get X. And if you work for the local book, and I don't know how you do that, but that's another real problem. I mean, that's why I'm kind of looking at, the idea of somehow, which this bill kind of comes around with how do you address those problems, in terms of looking at the discounts for education, looking at discounts for healthcare. I mean, do you know how great it would be if we had universal healthcare? Do you know what that would be? Right now you're wedded to your job. I mean, $15 an hour job without healthcare is bullshit. It's bullshit, Brian. Right? I mean, you can get wiped out on that. Mandy, that's an excellent point. I can't answer that. I think it's something we need to start working at.
Well, you can probably beat him in a primary, but that's the problem is West Virginia,
Yeah. I mean, and that's a pure political practical problem. And it's real. That Manchin's not going to be with you all the time, right? If you want a strict Democratic vote, but he's not going to be against you all the time either, right? So is it the devil, creepy grabbing here, sniffy pictures of colleagues, really young daughters. Yeah. I'm the first one to say, again, it gets to intent. All right. What was Joe Biden's intent? Now, some people say, nope, doesn't matter intent, right? It just doesn't matter. That's creepy. Okay. I got that. But
in his generation, there's not.
Well, that's all. But my basic thing is to anybody, and I'm not sitting here as right now. Give me somebody who would be a better president than Joe Biden in this moment, who is electable.
Right, and You've got nobody, unless you have Barack Obama, but he can't be president again.
Right. And there again, I mean, you have to deal with the practicality of what you have. I'm a Bernie Sanders. I think Bernie Sanders has great ideas. I don't think, and people disagree with me, but I don't think he can get elected nationally. I don't. I think, and I'm not so sure he'd be a good president. I think he's great right where he is, making sure that Joe Biden turns left when he should turn left.
Right.
AOC, woman of her convictions. I'd be way too young to be president. I mean, legally she can't be. Find me somebody. Not, Nancy Pelosi, brilliant where she is. She certainly not Chuck Schumer. I liked actually until I actually saw Al Franken as a possibility, especially as a vice president, and see how he did. But again, it just comes down to whether you want to be an absolutist, or whether you want to be a relativist, Brian. And that's, like I said, I'm a relativist. I've never encountered anything.
If you looked to, in 2024, and you had Ted Cruz up there or Josh Hawley, and you had Joe Biden there, I mean, I don't, it almost, I was reading this thing on Russian disinformation, how the KGB used disinformation to like travel from country to country in newspapers. And I can almost see how this kind of thought, is kind of pushed out. Like, I really do believe this whole thing with Biden has been really pushed, and by the Republican Party, not by the Russians, but by the Republican Party. And it has infiltrated, because they're zeroing in the far left. And it's very effective, even in the channels that we've had a problem with, Dave, as you've seen with the, what do you call, I don't even know what the hell the name of it was Chris's channel. Like it was
I remember. Yeah, I don't follow.
It's like a Jimmy Dore type thing, and and I think when I hear something like, well, I think that that there's a lot of truth in what Giuliani's saying. When I hear that, that means that you're getting a lot of disinformation getting thrown in the far left. What's it called? The jump in, the sink, the dive in, the dive in. Yeah,
the dive in or something. Well, I would say this. Even there, I'm a relativist. In other words, I'm close. I mean, I'm closer to the far left than I am to the moderate right. Right. And so I'm going to side. I think for the most part, maybe I'm naive with this. I've spent a lot of time in D.C. Now 10 years, and spent a lot of time. Even with the farthest left, and I'm talking about Antifa. I've had some, not say, I've been and talked to them because they're here, and even they will listen. I mean, the problem with the right is that they are just closed. They're just closed.
They're intransigent.
There's no reason to discuss with them. Like I've said before, I don't see it. I don't see it happening. They're going to have, as the Southerners say, their come to Jesus moment. And I'm not sure that will ever happen. Now, and before we all go, oh my God, here's my thinking. And again, disagree with me, people, if you do. Right now, the divisions are pretty firmly entrenched. And one of the biggest is rural versus urban, right?
Right.
There's a huge difference. There's a huge difference, right? And I don't know if it's as big as the division was between North and South, but it's pretty damn big. But the real battleground right now politically is the suburbs, because they're the barrier. You know what I mean? They're not completely urban. They're not completely rural, right? And that's where it is. And I don't see right now the Republican, philosophy or lack of philosophy or winning there. This election it someday will be proven to be won by two groups, I believe. One, a large group, which would be Black Americans, but the subgroup of that is women, Black voting women, who have a tendency to vote in much higher numbers than Black, and suburban women. And, we should every male in the United States who'd rather have Biden than Trump should be grateful, for the women. And I have a hard time, maybe being married to a feminist, but I have a hard time understanding how a woman can support what the Republican Party stands for now. Now, granted, they're so grateful to get women. Certainly
Ryan
nobody
would have said, if you ask yourself that question, you ask your question about religion. How could people believe in 5,000 years or 2,000
Well,
years?
I know. That's just it. But I'm not saying. But I really
the Germans,
Well, I know that, but I'm just saying again. Most of and we got to keep remembering, or at least I believe this to be true. There's very much a difference between the Republican voter and the Republican elected official. Okay, very much a difference. The difference is a lot of the Republican voters think they're doing the right thing. The Republican politicians are just using them. They don't. There are some true believers,
and they're afraid of them too.
Well, all of that. So the idea of it is,
it's a bad situation.
At some point, do they become practical and say, well, okay, I'm in Iowa. There ain't no cities here. I'm fine. I can do this. But somewhere like North Carolina, somewhere like Texas, where cities are growing? Does a Republican finally say, man, I think I got to get a little bit more moderate here in order to win? And if you look at Texas, it's becoming very much a tech hub, very much so. It costs a hell of a lot. It's a lot cheaper to locate in Austin than it is in Silicon Valley, and a lot of people are doing that. It's a lot cheap, So I mean, I see. Again, I don't couch it in terms of Democrat and Republican, and I'm not. We were talking about vocabulary, playing names. I couch it in terms. I used to couch it in terms of liberal and conservative. Now I couch it in terms of people who see reality and people who don't.
Right, and here's what I want to ask you, Dave.
Sure.
The comment is this first, is that you've mentioned that the powder keg that was there prior to what's been happening now. You mentioned this was a racist country. It was always a divided country, and now it's kind of just shown itself through Trump. And given this powder keg, which right now we're in a little bit of a lull, and
right. I mean, right.
Checks,
right.
But if that dynamite is still there, can we ever get to the point, or I would say can we, because it seems like it's a success, but is it out of the range of possibility that we could have a really drastic situation where the Republicans say, okay, we're just going to secede and we're going to just do this?
No. Well, of course it is. Anything's on the table. And
they want the nuclear weapons. You know what I mean?
No, they're not going to do it. If they want to secede, look, if they want to secede, I'll give them every state they have right now. I'm fine with that.
I don't want to give them Texas, but okay.
Well, I mean, give them something.
Well, Texas may burn out. I mean, we have some Texans.
So the point is, I thought you were going to go. I look at it another way. I think your dynamite analogy is really good, right? Mm-hmm. There's potential for big explosions out there right now, but you have somebody who has the match that can light the dynamite, and that's what Trump was so effective at. And that also gets down to how much is cult of personality. Is there a person in the United States right now able to run on the Republican ticket for president that can bring the people that Trump brought? We've had this. We discussed on the show, and I saw one.
And Trump wasn't even good looking. Sometimes you say, well, they get
no. I mean, I'm saying somebody said, and like I said, I can think of two really reaching for it, and they're still not Trump. One is Sean Hannity, if you're looking at on the TV side, and the other is Ivanka. But Ivanka is a woman, so even that, it would have to be bestowed. And the other thing we don't know, and I think we just got to play this out, and it's hard to play. That's like waiting out. A year ago, I got to be honest, Brian. We haven't talked about the pandemic tonight, and we should talk about it every show. I really didn't think America would be where we are right now with 500,000 dead, but I also didn't think we'd have a vaccine. You know what I mean? So.
Well, I just went through puberty or something. We
all do that.
But I'm saying, but don't forget that I think it was in January of last year that the Chinese had the genome to it, and you talk about creativity. They did determine the genome to the
Well, I understand that, and of course, part of the problem, I mean, I'm not going to give trumpets the China virus because that limits it. But I think, history will show, obviously, we already know that, history will show that they were aware of it long before they pulled what I call a Trump. They didn't let us know.
The guy that wants to, Dave.
The pillow guy?
At Mike, what's his name? Lindell. He wants, he thinks he can be a president.
No. Look, he doesn't even sell good pillows. I mean, think about it. I mean, he was probably doing pretty well, the pillow guy, right?
He was.
And was is a key term there. I want to see what his bottom line is this time next year. A hell of a lot of people aren't buying pillows from the pillow guy right now.
No, they're not.
Now maybe more are, right? I don't know. I mean, I don't know that. But I really think, so get back to this cult of personality and Donald Trump. I will say on tonight's show and every show until he does, I will say this. If Trump can go through unscathed with the legal charges that are going to be placed against him in the next, what do we have? 9 months? 9 months, right? We're March, so 9 more months of this year. I might even vote for him because he might really be the anointed one. No, I mean, so what happens? Does he become more of a martyr and become more of a power? Or does everybody say, well, he can't run for president, so I want his power? We don't know. We don't know. It's just like it was too early. It's too early to say. Right now, what we do know is it is Trump's party. It is clearly Trump's party. Anybody who opposes Trump, I mean, what a brilliant move. Don't send your money to the Republicans because they didn't back me. Send it to me. Did you read? Right. I mean, that's one of it says there are no restrictions on use of this money. Most times they say this money can only be used for X, Y, and Z. He can pay himself with it, and he will. But people are sending that money. So right now, now here's a statistic. This is a good point to bring it up. Maybe you could explain this, Brian. I can't. All right. So 75% of the American people in one poll said they approve of, if not all, the majority of the stipulations in the rescue bill.
Yes.
I can't read. I mean, that's high no matter what. That's pretty high. Yet the most recent survey said that 81% of the Republicans believe that the election was stolen and Donald Trump should still be president. Those two numbers don't jive, right? I mean, so are they saying one thing and not, I mean, so we don't even know what Trump's real popularity is. We don't know. And
those $1,400 checks are going to have a lot of popularity. That's for sure.
Well, I don't know.
They'll know that's real when they get that in their account.
Well,
they might want to check tonight.
You know what? You know what, though, Brian? I'm not so sure they will. I mean, I'm at a loss to understand them. I really am. I mean, I don't see. I mean, Jesus Christmas, show me one thing Trump did. And I don't want to hear he did well for the economy for the pandemic. Because if I was 7 foot, I might have played in the NBA. I mean, that you got to look at the facts as they are. I mean, show me, and I'm not asking you, you're not, but I'm saying show me what he did that was so good. 500,000 Americans dead. A new guy takes over, granted.
Gave money to the rich, and maybe that's what they like about it.
Well, how dumb is that?
It's dumb.
I get mad when Jeff Bezos I want his money. Don't give it to Jeff.
And I get my lunatic Trump cousin decides to tell me that first of all, Biden is a dictator and that he's giving away $1,400 checks to prisoners, and that he should show up for his State of the Union speech. Because we know why Republicans want them to show, because they're hoping that something bad happens. And of course, I had to just set him straight on that. But this is the way they think.
Well, Brian, I've done everything except beat you with a fly swatter. Because as smart as you are sometimes, and you always say, well, you're the idealist, you're the optimist, and I'm the pragmatist. I still think you look at there's a way to reach them. There isn't a way to reach them.
No,
there is not a way to reach them. Okay, they are, in my way of thinking, they're the same as a drug addict or an alcoholic who doesn't realize he or she has the problem.
Yeah, the evil Yoda. Yes, Trump himself says he created more jobs for African Americans and all this kind of,
after the pandemic. See, and I know.
And by the way, when you're talking about after the pandemic, when they start coming back, they're not. It's the jobs that they lost that they're just coming back into it. I mean, it's not like he's creating. He said he kept saying record job growth. Yeah, because you had nobody working.
Seriously, knowing that politicians do embellish, they do,
he manipulates. That's beyond.
No, he doesn't. He just lies. I mean, look. Now, the Washington Post isn't infallible, but they documented 10,000 lies. 10,000 lies in 4 years. Put that one back up. I missed that. I was talking about the Democratic leadership. Yeah, Trev, sometimes I wonder about that. I can't really explain it. The best I can say, and this is the best I can come up with, is it's a good and bad of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has always had groups, right? And it's hard to bring groups together. When I say groups, they have the black, they have Jewish, they have the entertainment industry, that gravitate toward that. They have people that scratch their back on Saturday night shows with a back scratcher. They're usually Democrats. And so what happens is
itchier. Ever since I bought this, my back has gotten itchier every time.
That's a sign of COVID, but we won't go there.
All right.
No, the thing is though, where Republicans seem to have this ability that, whoever's there, we're with them, right? I mean, Trump proves that. So I don't know, whether Democrats are so much afraid to use their power, or it's just the fact that they can't get enough to agree. I mean, right now, and I'm sorry, even Manchin's talking about reforming the filibuster. I can't say this filibuster staying the way it is. Not only because I would eliminate it. But you don't have the votes right now, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know when Manchin's up. I don't know when your girl, the one you're in love with, Sietzma or whatever the hell her name is in Colorado.
I'm not in love with her.
You told me one time you loved the cinema. I remember you telling me that.
You're talking about
nothing's
that. Dancing for her.
You were talking about cinema with a C, right?
Yeah.
I know. The idea is, again, it's that same thing, Would you rather
tolerance of the back scratcher? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I
have to go extra hard.
Actually, rare medium. They're looking for what's it called? Herd immunity. Brian doesn't have herd immunity yet for the back scratcher. See, people care about you.
I got to fill up another glass of water.
Mandy, that is very nice. I don't care what happens to Brian. You do. And that's very nice.
Thank you.
I would say sweet, but that's a sexist term. So I'm going to say nice, that you care. You don't want to know something, though? I'm going to use Mandy for a moment. Now, I've never met Mandy. I don't know who she is. Other than seeing her name on here. But I think that was a very democratic, a very liberal thing to say. Isn't that an example? Can you
say go die?
He's got the right to scratch his back. I don't care. It's fine. And Mandy comes along and says, you know what? That could be a problem, Brian. And so that. And again, Brian, you were saying before about the I and we. Remember when we were talking about Buckley and Vidal, and right. There has to be a we in there. And I think that is a huge difference. The conservative mind has always been about me and those like me and us. That's really what it's been. The Republican mind, the conservative mind, the idea of holding on. And you can't hold on. You were talking about the Chinese earlier.
Keep holding on. What was it? Keep holding on from yesterday?
Yesterday. You can't do it.
Was it traffic or something?
There's a lot of. Actually, that was Simply Red had that one. I think actually holding on to yesterday. I remember the lyric too. But you can't do that. So the real trick in life, kids, from a 69-year-old man is this: you get your standards, you have to live by them, but they have to sometimes be adjusted as times change, right? And so you can't go back.
No, because we live in the present. We can't live. Yeah, you can't even live in the future. You have to live in the present.
It's right here, right now. Now, what you can do is say, what can I do right now that'll make the future better, right? That's something. But you still have to. You're right. You still have to live in the present.
And even then, those days of the past, those days you were still living in the present. That's how it became something important.
But there is, if you believe, if there is a reality crisis, look. Okay, I'll use myself for an example. Born in the 50s. So let's see, I was born in 52. So I had 8 years in the 50s. So I was probably cognizant, 6, 7, 8, 3 of those years maybe. And we lived, Brian, you'll know where it is. We lived in Glen Park Apartments, which is now considered a ghetto in Bridgeton. Well, it wasn't then a ghetto, obviously. It was actually built for GIs. It was GIs homes that they put up. And we lived there, and I lived in Seabrook Village, which is now a ghetto. I lived in Carl's Corner, which is now a ghetto. But we didn't lock our doors any. Well, it would be nice to go back to that, right? Maybe, but that wasn't really real either, because if you look at the 50s, everybody was kind of rising a little bit. Not the groups, but I'm saying people. Dwight Eisenhower would be considered a socialist today. Right. Richard Nixon, for all his failings, and he had so many of them, but he did have some things
Trump
did
would
get
have
done.
attacked him almost.
Oh, well, I mean, no, he would be, today. So, but you just can't go back there. I mean, it's just not going to happen. It's just not that way. And when you talk about economic inequality, we've danced around that a little bit. I mean, I don't know. It's now official. We have, more division than any time of history between the rich and the poor, more than the Gilded Age. And in the Gilded Age, the Vanderbilts and the people realized we got to give something back, so they built museums and things, right? That kind of thing. And right now, Bill Gates has done wonders for the. If you're talking about one world, and I think we lose sight of that in America. You realize, I mean, every American should realize we're only as safe. We will only be safe, with a small s and in quotes, from the pandemic when all the world is inoculated. It won't be because variants can, so yes, I understand that. Gates is doing a pretty good job. Meredith Bezos is doing a great job of shaming her husband and giving away billions. Twitter, compared to Zuckerberg and Facebook, he's like, Mother Teresa giving away everything to the poor. But right now, what was it? 380 billion? The top 10 richest people going into the pandemic are now $380 billion richer than they were before it began. Yeah, I mean, rare, medium, I got that. I don't believe in philanthropy. I don't know. I mean, it's very, it's very, what should I say? I mean, the question becomes, how do you justify having that much money? I think you tax it and distribute it that way. Now, Amazon doesn't think that. They crown her with, how many, who's the biggest job creator during this pandemic? By far. Do you know who that was, Brian?
I'm going to guess Amazon or UPS. I mean, one or the other.
Amazon clearly. So they hide behind that, or I don't say they hide behind. I mean, that is good, I guess. But the problem becomes,
Well, I would say Joe has a question about would Ronald Reagan be considered? No, he wouldn't be. But I think that Republicans would consider his philosophy toward the oppositional party weak, or if something anti-Republican. I mean,
it's good. That is a good question, Joe. I think Reagan, in my estimation, remember, I'm not a political scientist or a political scholar. I'm just someone who follows it a little bit. Reagan was a moment. And Reagan really rose to power on a reactionary movement against hippies and Black Panthers and radicals and those of us who were doing that then. The suburbs, again, were scared, right? Mm-hmm. And he came to that forefront. People forget, again, studying history. Do you know he started out as a very leftist?
Right. Until he got his gigs with,
and there you are. And suddenly, all of a sudden, he's off and running. Reagan, I don't think Reagan was the smartest president ever. So I think he did rely a lot on his advisors. And, you want a president to do that, but you better damn well make sure you have some good advisors. And I think certainly little Bush, baby Bush, suffered from that. And he had daddy issues. He wanted to finish the job his daddy had started. But Reagan, Reagan had that ability. How can I say this? Even if you disagreed with him, he was an actor, right? And you kind of felt, that he was the opposite of Donald Trump in public. I mean, he was self-deprecating, right? Now you had to look beyond that, and it's hard to look beyond that. I mean, and there you are, Mandy. That's exactly it. Mandy's got it. He was an actor.
Right, and that makes me wonder what Trump would have done in this situation. What if he played the Trump game, or would he have come out against him? I'm afraid that he.
Well, I can answer that if you want.
Do it.
If Donald Trump will come against anyone who he feels is a danger to him. That's all. So if he felt that they could coexist, Reagan and Trump, it would be fine.
I'm saying, Reagan, how would Reagan, react as a man? What would he do? Because sometimes he did take chances.
There you are, Brian. That's a great. That's like trying to take your boy Holsworth and saying, was he better than a guitar player who played with the jump bands in the you're talking about different decades and different styles.
Right, you can't compare.
I mean, it's really our sports. Who's better? I always use that. If you want the best basketball player of my lifetime, and I think of the game, it's Michael Jordan. If you want the best basketball player who also was the best human being to play the game, Bill Russell was it until LeBron James came along. I mean, so again, it's what you're looking for, right? Yeah, Mandy, he would see where the party was going. Now that's interesting. Okay. And I wish I had paid more attention to it, because it is clear that, with, again, so Reagan comes in and kind of does his thing. And that gives birth to the Tea Party, who took his name. So the first evil Republican, I think in my life, was Newt Gingrich, still is. And then the Tea Party got more brazen. And then suddenly, the alt-right became more. And then on top of that, you get these patriots who are not, they're domestic terrorists, but they call themselves patriots.
Yeah, that's a good comment there, but I want you to make sure you see it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Do you know what we used to call him? In fact, it's on the Woodstock soundtrack. We all called him at that point, Ronald Ray Guns, he loved that. And he spoke about it because that was his thing. He and Nixon both won on somewhat the law and order platform. Reagan is the inventor of the Black Welfare Queen. Man, did that one stick, right? And there you are again, Trev. Think about that.
Well, they hit it well.
They did. No, he was in bad shape. And Nancy, she was a big believer in astrology, and Reagan did believe in astrology. She'd say, "Oh, this is not the right time. Wear a red dress."
Interesting comment by Gary.
Gary. And again, and this is one area where I don't think, you look at the times. A rapist is a rapist through all time, right? I mean, that's interesting. Like you can even play tangentially with, well, slavery was accepted and this wasn't. I mean, that's that. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just sick. A rapist. It has to do with sex. It has to do with power. It's male domination. It's despicable. And that brings us back around to, people saying tonight, well, Joe Biden was kind of icky. Again, I would say that has to be looked at in terms of what Trump did is more icky. Do I give him a pass? No. I did give Bill Clinton way too much of a pass in his time. And there you are. You are absolutely right. Rare medium, 100% right. And I didn't even see your comment. I gave Clinton way too much of a pass. I really did. As he did a lot of things, he did get elected, but then again, he was shaped by Arkansas, right? And he had the ability. He also, while he wasn't an actor, man, he had the ability to, I'll feel your pain, and people like that. There's many things that they like. I think Biden's speech the other night, got a lot of acclaim for, he was able to do that ability. And, he's not one of our great speakers, but he was able to do the ability, listen, it's still bad out there, but there is this hope. And I think he's exactly right. I don't know how many of our listeners or viewers, whatever, are what age they all are. I'm at that age where, it was really hard to get the vaccine. Because it was just hard. I mean, I live in an area where 92% of the people in my county want it, and that's 92% across the board. And we didn't have that many. Now my wife got it, and she gets her second shot on Monday, and I get mine. I got the Pfizer, so I was able to jump a week. I get mine on Wednesday. The point being that do I give all credit to Joe Biden for that? No, but I certainly would say that, that's been another improvement just along those lines. So when he talked about, he came out and said, this is bad. Donald Trump said it will go away, right? And you know why he said it would go away, Brian? He was terrified of exactly what would happen, that his jobs program would fall apart. And most of his life was done. He could wish things away. Do you know how many times he's committed crimes before this and gotten away with it? And one of the ways he got away with it is he had the appearance of unlimited money. You know, we'll stretch this. Yeah, take it to court. We'll stretch it forever. But, you know, we'll see how that works out for him in New York and Georgia and that. So, Brian, I'm going to close this way. Tonight, we didn't talk about anything that I thought we would talk about. And the reason we didn't, I think it was one of the better shows for this reason. We addressed things that kind of, you know, or we tried to, as best we could, talk about the comments and questions up there. And they're my favorite kind of shows. They really are. I wish we had more time, you know, to address everybody's questions. You know, we try to do what we can. And, you know, I wish I'm working on some ideas where we don't have the ability. I'll have the ability soon, and we may be able to do it here on this program. We can do call-ins, and I know there's some danger to that, but that's kind of cool too, because you can have a conversation. I like that, but I mean, I like the way I had. So just I'm just thanking everybody who listened. If you noticed tonight, Brian, I was very proud of you. You did not play the Chipmunks once, and as luck would have it, there is fate in the world. I hadn't thought about David Seville in years, right? The Chipmunks, and I'm doing some research. And do you know what year I was researching 1971, and he died, and he had a name I didn't even know.
That was say you're going to have him on your show. So
no, he's dead. We can't even have him on the show.
Well, we'll have a seance and try to bring him back. All right.
Okay, Nancy Reagan.
Okay.
Your turn. You close us out.
All right. Thank you, Dave. I really do appreciate you coming. Yeah. You know, we were ready to jump on because I know, you know, Ryan couldn't make it tonight. He did text me saying that, you know, something came up. And Ryan Velez will be us.
Can I ask one thing?
Sure.
Would you make sure that wasn't a date with Stormy Daniels, because that'll bother me.
You'll have a problem.
Okay.
But Ryan couldn't make it, so I had about 3 or 4 videos set up for voter suppression. Ryan asked that we do something on voter suppression. It is.
We'll do it the next time he's on.
Yeah, it is kind of the big topic, and I always like to have, you know, something prepared for that, and I did have some videos. But, you know, Human, you've been kind of like the guy tonight, because you're the one who started off with the getting us in a different direction. And again, thanks. If you can still get a hold of, was it Regan Parenton? I don't know how to pronounce the name, but he seems like a decent enough guy with some really good thoughts. Yeah, we'd love to have him on the show, or anybody, yourself. Just say the word and we'll send a link. But what I did want to say about this is that I am not unhappy about the fact that we didn't go into voter suppression. It's not that I don't like the topic. I do like to talk about anything that can help us deal with what the Republicans are doing. But in general, I relate it to, when you play music, play jazz, sometimes it goes into a different direction when you don't expect it to go this place. And sometimes that's okay, like all roads lead to Rome kind of thing. And as Dave said, it kind of worked out. Sometimes it is the better show when you go on that other route. And I really think that it was an interesting show tonight. I really liked it because I think there was a lot of introspection and everybody was involved, and that's a truly successful show. I don't know about our numbers. We don't usually get more than 30 or 40 people total at any live program because we have the Facebook group, we have the YouTube, and then Periscope, which is moving to Twitter in 2 weeks. But I think it was, as Dave said, it went into a direction that we hadn't expected, but it worked out. And we will get to voter suppression. We'll do that with Ryan. But I think that whatever you want to call this show, it was kind of a potpourri of things. But it generally revolved around education, and I appreciate everybody's comments. They were great. They really, I felt from the beginning of the show until right now that, this was perfect. Yeah, we'll have everybody. Look, Dave and I, Dave will tell you himself. We don't care. Trev can come on. Trev B5's been, he's been part of the gang, so to speak, for a long time now, and we've developed these online friendships with people. And Trev, I think I've known Trev for 3 years now. I've known Trev longer than I've known some of my students, but it's at a distance, of course, but it doesn't make it any less important. So, yeah, if you are interested in, coming live, we would appreciate if you use a camera, though, because that's part of the thing. I'm not set up for like the phone call thing. I mean, I could certainly go like this, but I'm not gonna, go up to the microphone and do that. I really would. Yeah. So I think we're getting some comments in here. Make me 1 second. Share links. Yeah, I can do that. Trev. So next time I have it on my phone. I'm not actually looking at it right now, but next time I'll put it on while we're on. Put down the volume so it won't get any feedback, and then I'll make you a mod. We don't have any mod. We've never had a problem for mods, but I guess you want to share the links. Yeah, I'll do that, Trev. Yeah, I can do that. That's
Brian. You said no sex tonight. I don't know if you were talking about what you're not going to have any, or you didn't want any on the show. I wasn't
talking about it. You seem to.
Oh. Well, I guess that kind of blows what I was going to say. I was thinking about this. Sometimes, do you think this would increase our numbers? I not that I would count, but 1,042 steps from my apartment complex is a gentleman's club. If we did it live from there, do you think that would be? Do you think that would help our viewership, or you think that would offend our viewers?
I think that would offend most of our.
Okay, I was just asking.
It might initially get people to look and say, "What's he doing?" But
okay,
they might
I just
see
wondering.
you in a new light. But I don't know.
No,
yeah, but Dave's more just joking about it than actually doing.
Well, not really, but okay. If you want to pass it off that way.
Okay.
No, I want an excuse to go over there.
All right, well, you better ask Judy, okay?
No, that's what I'm saying. She says no, and I listen to her.
Yeah, the views might go. Well, if I'll tell you what, Dave, if you can get Stormy Daniels to come on the show, she's welcome to come on. If she's long she generally talks about politics and things like that. Yeah. But like Lenny Bruce said, like some guy was heckling him and said some sexual things. You want to talk like that. He said, there's a chick with big tits over there. Go see her. I'm doing a show. And it's funny, as crude as Lenny Bruce could be, that shows how serious he was. That it really wasn't I can get another show doing this. He wanted this guy to get serious. And even though he used obscenities, Lenny Bruce was the real deal. And Dave and I.
Lenny Bruce, there are people that are behind their times like Donald Trump, and there are people that are ahead of their times like Lenny Bruce. And Lenny Bruce was way ahead of his times.
And we'll put these up, folks, because I am going to go to the outro in a couple seconds. Evil Yoda did say this, Dave, and I will post this as we go out. And you can keep posting up to the point it shuts off. When the song shuts off, it shuts off. But Evil Yoda says we should have more activity. I ideally like to do it more, but
I'm saying what was
summer we can do it. He says you mean daily? Activity daily makes the show grow.
Well, and who said that?
Evil Yoda.
Evil Yoda. Next week. You have to be careful what you wish for. Brian, if you remind me, I'll make an announcement next week that will lead us to more activity. So just remember, Evil, if you don't like it, you are the cause. Okay, we're putting it solely on.
Well, we'll
solely
try.
on your
We're
shoulder.
getting closer to June anyway. I like to take advantage of the fact that I have more free time. So, but I want to thank everybody, Human, Evil, Mandy, Joey, Trev. And Trev, yes, it's been 3 years. It's really amazing, from Reality Report to this, and Chad and Rare Medium.
Don't forget Gary.
Gary, how can we forget Gary? And
it's my main man.
Are there any more here? I don't miss anybody here. I'm thinking
that's the problem, Brian, and people don't realize that. Like, you want to give everybody acknowledgement, but the minute you do a list, invariably, somebody slips your mind, and then
we have like a crew of like 7 or 8 who are. And this is what makes the show great, because look, if we had, I don't know, even like 80 or 90 people in the room, when I was working with Paul doing the Guy McPherson interviews, when Guy was on, there'd be like 300 people in the chat, and you couldn't keep on top of the thing. I know you can slow down the chat, but it's important, And by the way, again, if you haven't subscribed, if you're watching this after the live performance, like right now, but it's not right now when you're watching it, please subscribe, and please become a member of Divided We Stand, and please share it. Again, we don't monetize whatsoever. Yeah, I mean, look, Trev, I don't want to go into this too much, but just know that, what we're trying to do here is what, we're doing. The reality report was different. It was an important thing that we did. But this kind of program was different in that Dave and I knew that you had to go all the way, and you had to do something, and you have to take a stand, and you have to say, okay, I'm going to be here. There was nothing of it. We wanted to see Trump defeated, and we still want to see the Republicans defeated. We want to have a fair society, and you have to actively, in that moment of risk, you have to dive in, and I can't negotiate with that kind of thing. I have to be there, and I have to have that. And I always felt like with the reality report, as great as the show as it was at times, this kind of thing needed dedication to the defeat of this individual named Donald Trump and the Republican Party, and we still have that because I really, and I've been right. Both Dave and I have been right since March of last year, in that they were a real threat, and there was not a time to have an open forum and say, well, just start saying this is bad and Biden's, but no, it's either you're on this side of the fence or you're on this side of the fence. No fence sitting, and you can't. And I'm not trying to be mean to any of the other people, but I just felt that this had to be done, and it had to be that way. And this is
and
why.
Brian, also, your other test is, which I think I disagree with.
Smash the like button there. Yeah.
It is. I disagree with this, but it is your show. You said that you're going to throw off anybody who doesn't have the Chipmunks in their top 10 favorite acts of all time.
That we laugh at the Chipmunks, but that was, for me, there's something warm about that song because it was my
Lord.
past.
He's going to talk about it. Oh, okay, Lord. Okay. I'm sorry, kids.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, I do, because you get sued for that. Yeah. So I do want to.
I don't want North Korea after me. Look, but they weren't mad at the Chipmunks. They're mad at your screeching. So
well, anytime I can make Rocket Man mad,
smash
I feel
the
I've done
like button.
I've had a good day.
No. And yeah.
Bye, ladies and gentlemen.
That's why the reality report, dividing stand is what it divided. You had to take the stand. The reality report was a completely different
Now,
concept.
Brian, wait a minute. You keep saying this. You say you had to take the stand, and the poor guy who was a patriot who took that stand, that was Nancy Pelosi's, he got arrested. So what are you saying here? Are you saying he took the stand and that's a good thing?
He was on the other side of the fence. I mean, see,
okay. All right. I just want to make sure about that.
I mean, I was on the other side of the fence in that guy. It's you have to take a stand, and it was pragmatism. Reality report was idealism. This is pragmatism, and that's to say the idealism is wrong. I'm an idealist, but I'm also a pragmatist. At a point when I see that.
And you also have damn poor musical taste when you like the Chipmunks, but we won't go there.
All right, well, Holdsworth and the Chipmunks, that's just two different things there. All right, listen.
Yep. Okay. There's your mashup: Holdsworth music, Chipmunks singing. You could be a star.
That would be.
You can do it.
Well, they have. There's a Steve Hackett, and you won't like this.
Genesis, Jesus God!
But Steve Hackett had this. What was the album? Please Don't Touch, and he has this album where like the little kids and they have like almost like a chipmunk sound, which was really kind of cool. I like that. It was really, really cool. So anyway, now I just have to find my outro. I'll play all the comments in the outro. Try to get them all in, folks. And Dave and I really appreciate. Honestly, we really appreciate it.
We do.
So, and my hard drive over here, external is warming up, and you'll see the outro from Seabreeze, New Jersey. I gotta find it. Hold on. I have to find this. It'll be here in a second. Here we go. Good night, everybody.
Dans Lyon, il y a une jolie fille.